Hello again, this is D. How you doing? This is episode 2, day 2 of this podcast. And I'm a little calmer today. I think yesterday's recording was a little out there. Raw and completely imperfect. Mostly crap, but no, not really. Just, I don't know why anybody would listen to this podcast. Pardon me. But I know I'm going to get better. I know that things will improve as I keep recording this. I know that there's so much need out there, and I don't know if I'm the one to provide it. Maybe I've had some success. I know I've provided some comfort through my other podcast, the Benzo Free Podcast, for those people coming off of anti-anxiety medication. I know I raised some awareness, and I know I made a difference, at least in a small way. If I can even have 1/10 of that kind of reach with this podcast, then I am okay with that. But part of me coming off those drugs is some mental and physical limitations and complications and nervous system congruations. Is that right? No, that's not right. Whatever I'm trying to think of. But I think part of that is also indecisiveness, and that's why starting a new podcast was difficult for me. And so here I am. I'm just starting it, and I'm going to throw out these first 15 episodes or whatever, maybe less, maybe more, while I'm on the road on this trip. And I'm hoping that I'll start to get into a groove and things will start to make sense. And I'll just toss them all out there, probably post them all on the same day just to get a launch for the podcast. And hopefully some of you will think there might be something here enough that you'll want to comment and let me know what was good and especially what wasn't. And that'll help me tweak it. That'll help me hopefully do a podcast that's helpful to others. And if it gets a following and it starts to do better, then that's just great. And if it doesn't, I needed to do it anyway. This is not a blog, and I don't want to call this a blog because I don't want to make this about me, even though it always is about me when I do these things. But it's really not what I want it to be. I want it to be about us. I want it to be about human beings. I want it to be about people struggling with anxiety. I want it to be about people struggling with life. I want to do something that's raw and real, something that's honest, something that's not putting on airs, something that's not trying to act like I'm some great mentor, because I'm far from that. I'm not a mentor at all. Instead, just a friend who's going through the same shit that the rest of us are. And that's who I am. I'm hoping. And, I know I'm going through it, and I know some of you are. I can't tell you, as I've been working on this podcast on this site, and I've been telling people that I meet at coffee shops or whatever, because people often ask what you're doing, and I ask what they're doing, and I would tell them I do a podcast, and I do a podcast that, and I do a support site that helps people who struggle with anxiety and or the complications of anxiety medication. That's what Easing Anxiety is. That's the site that I run. And this podcast is the one that's not focused on the drugs. This is focused on life and anxiety. Just to sum it up, that's really what I think this is about. It's about life and anxiety. It's about living with anxiety. I do it every day. Excuse me. Sorry, I just did a long walk and I'm a little coughing from it as I stop here to record. I deal with it every day. It's definitely gotten better since the first couple of years coming off the drugs. But I still deal with it, and I still deal with the complications of taking that medication, and I still work with people every day who are dealing with that too. And I'm hoping this might help. I'm hoping it might help. So where am I? For those who are following this trip, I'm going to tell you that right now I am at Lake Lenexa in Lenexa, Kansas. It is actually Black Hoof Park, and I'm just below the dam. And it is cold out here today, about 37 degrees. There's a wind, it's moisture in the air, and because of that, and also because right now the Chiefs game is going, it's dead quiet here. There's nobody here, and I love that. I love that. It's just getting a little bit of peace. And for those who are curious at all, I am from here. Lenexa, it was my hometown, at least for probably 2/3 of my childhood were spent here in Lenexa, Kansas, just outside of Kansas City. And since the Chiefs game just started, I should be listening to that game and watching it. It's been a rough year for us this year, for anybody that's football fans out there. But I'm going to catch the second half. I needed to do this first. The reason I stopped, one of the key reasons is I used to stop here a lot when I would come in town to go visit my family and visit my folks and everything like that. I would often drive in town, I would stop here, and then I would do a hike, and I would just kind of get out and stretch my legs and everything. And this is just fucking crazy. Okay, there is this platform on top of the bridge across the dam, and there's some guy just climbed on top of it. Don't think you're supposed to do that, but I'm not sure what he's doing. I'm sure he's looking down here and wondering what I'm doing. So, we're all both wondering what we're doing. So anyway, but this is me. This is kind of weird because he's looking down here at me and I'm looking up at him. So anyway, I'm going to let him be and come back to it. One of the things with this podcast that I mentioned on day one was I wanted this to be raw and real, and for the most part, I'm not promising I'll never edit it after, but truth is, editing takes time. And the shorter I can make my producing process, the shorter I can reduce the time of my post work for these podcasts, the more I can get out, the more content, and that's my goal. So this one's going to be a little raw, but I'm going to, I'm doing the best I can. Anyway, sorry, got distracted there. That was not my plan, but I didn't expect there to be anybody here because I've not seen one person yet. All of a sudden, this guy's climbing on top of this platform, on top of the bridge across the dam. So something that I won't do. But anyway, I am at Lake Lenexa. It's a place I used to stop all the time when I would come in town. And the reason I'm mentioning this is actually where not only I would get that respite and that meditative walk after a long drive from Denver to Kansas City, but now since my parents passed a couple of years ago, this is where we purchased a memorial bench for them. And I had not seen it yet. And so this is my first time back to see that bench now that it was installed this spring. And so I stopped there first and sat there for a while and meditated for a little while and spoke to my parents for a little bit, and that was kind of nice. They both passed a couple years ago, almost about 2 years ago. And things change as life goes on. That's a whole other process that we'll talk about, because grieving and dealing with the loss and elderly's complications, the complications that elderly individuals deal with, the stuff that I saw managing that with my parents are things that I'll never be able to unsee. And anyway, I can get off on things all the time. But this podcast is about life, about anxiety, and hopefully a little slower take on life. Looking in depth at things, that the struggles we have. There are so many people out there right now struggling with emotions of all kinds, mental health difficulties of all kinds. I don't care what you call it. We all deal with it. We all deal with mental health complications at some point. That's life. And if this podcast helps one person, it was worth it. It's that simple. But before I go any further, I think you need to know who I am. So I think today I'm going to focus a little bit on who am I, because I think you need to know that if you're listening to this podcast. Oh, I love the sound of that train. I don't know if you could hear that or not. That's so peaceful. I don't know why. That is so peaceful to me. That's definitely a sound that is quite familiar here in Kansas City. Where I live north of Denver, we don't really get a lot of train sounds, so I kind of miss that. I miss that sound. So me. So I'm going to tell you a little about me. And this is easy, a podcast episode you could skip. If you already know who I am, or you've listened to the other podcast, or any of the interviews I did or anything else like that, you can skip this one because you don't need it. You've already been there, and I don't want to make it all about me. Next episode, I hope to cover a little bit about what we're really going to be doing in this podcast. So maybe tomorrow I'll talk more on that, and I look forward to that. Maybe even tonight I will. It is actually New Year's Eve here right now, 2023. I'm on the road on New Year's Eve. I'll be spending New Year's Eve alone. My wife's back home. And to get to be able to leave on a trip in time, to get her back in time for a work start, I had to leave on New Year's Eve. So I'll be spending that alone in a hotel tonight, and that's okay. I'm all right with that, which is kind of nice that I'm okay with that. I can't say I always have been. Who am I? So, like I said, sorry about talking about myself a lot. Sorry about that. I know I do that too much on here, and I'm not that person. I don't want to be that person. But here it is. This is who I am. Feel free to skip this and go to the next episode, or never listen to this podcast again, which I totally understand if this isn't going where you want it to. My name is D.E. Foster. That's just initials D and E. I go by D is my nickname. I don't use my full name on here. I haven't since I started doing work with benzos and other stuff like that. I've just kept to the initial D. It's a nickname my nephews gave me when they were really young, when they had trouble saying full names, so they just called me Uncle D. That's where that came from. When I wrote my book on benzodiazepines, I used that as the pen name. It then became the name I used on the podcast, and before you know it, it just became the name I was using all over the place. So I'm just going by D.E. Foster. So that's who I am. There, we're done. What do you think? You want more? You probably don't want more, but I'm going to continue. Really quickly, background, I grew up, like I said, a lot of times in Kansas City. I was born in KCMO, Kansas City, Missouri, at St. Luke's Hospital downtown KCMO, and first lived in Overland Park, Kansas, only for about a year and a half. Then we moved to Creve Coeur, Missouri for about 6 months, and then to St. Charles, Illinois, which is about 35 miles due west of Chicago, a suburb of Chicago. And that's where I spent all my grade school years, at least through 5th grade. So grew up there. Beautiful little town, great place to grow up, had great friends and everything. My dad got moved for a new job, and we moved to Lenexa, Kansas, just southwest of Kansas City. And that's where I'm at right now speaking to you. So I lived the rest of my childhood and college and even post-college years here in Kansas City, and grew up here basically. I now live north of Denver, Colorado, and I've been in this location. Actually, we lived in 3 places in Colorado: Superior, and then we lived in Estes Park for 7 years, which if you've ever been there, beautiful town up in the mountains. And now we've been in this house in Broomfield, Missouri for, and now we've been in this house for, again, that guy's doing weird stuff. I'm not sure. I think he's seen me and knows I'm here, and I see him, and so it's kind of this, stare off, like he's probably wondering what that asshole down there is doing, and I'm wondering what that guy up there's doing, and there goes my phone. Do they not know I'm recording something? It's my wife. I better take this. I'll be back. Okay, I am back. I apologize for that break. I'm trying to record these straight through, but sometimes life finds you. Let me tell you a bit what happened, and then I'll get back to whatever I was talking about, which I think was my benzo story, or my story of something. It's not benzo story. This is not a benzo channel. My story. I can't help but just say my benzo story. I've been talking on benzodiazepines and anti-anxiety drugs for so long, it comes out automatically. Anyway, I'm at this extremely peaceful place where my parents' bench is, memorial bench that we got for them after they passed away a couple of years ago. Lake Lenexa, almost, like 1 or 2 people at the entire park. Really quiet. In fact, right now I'm back sitting in my car now. That's why things sound completely different in the parking lot, and there's 1 other car at the parking lot because it's kind of cold out here and nobody's at the park. Anyway, when I was speaking with you before, my phone rang. It's my wife, and she's having trouble getting the sound to work on the TV back home. It's a complicated setup. It's my fault I didn't really run her through it before I left, and unfortunately I had trouble, figuring out what it was. We were trying to talk through it. It wasn't happening. So I walked 20 minutes back to the car to FaceTime with her where it was a little warmer and I could walk through it. We finally got it figured out. While that was happening, my sister called me and my friend called me and other people called me, and this peaceful, and there we go again, and this peaceful, that's that train whistle, in case you're wondering, is my text signal on my phone. And there's my phone going again. But it's funny how, life isn't on schedule. And when you think you have this, I hadn't seen my parents' bench yet. It was put in the spring, and it's now December, and I came out here to spend a little time there, to think, and to pray a little bit, and to be with my parents, and record this podcast where it's a little more peaceful and such. But that's not always how life works. So I fixed the TV problem and responded to my friend, and my sister finally called her back, a little frustrated, but then of course I found out why she was calling, and that is that my parents' best friends, the couple friend that they've known for, 50, 60, it's got 60 plus years or something, he just passed away this morning. So my parents' best friends, the husband passed away. And this was while I was at the bench. I learned about this, which is very interesting. Some things I think do happen for reasons. So I got on the phone and talked to the wife, to the widow, and corresponded with one of the daughters, and touched base and saw if there's anything I could do while I'm here and everything, because they live here in Kansas City area, and so I was offering to stop by and chat with them. So I talked to them and handled that for a while, and feel so bad. And hopefully they're going to have a memorial service here in a few weeks, maybe even later in the spring, and I hope to be there for that and come back for that when that happens. But it was just strange that, why now of all the times? Why is it when I'm back in Lenexa, hadn't been back here for 8 months or so, 9 months, and sitting on the bench that's for my folks, it just seems some things happen at the right time and for a reason. So anyway, I'm back in the car now, and I wanted to finish a couple things and wrap this up so that I can go and grab dinner. I have dinner here in about an hour and a half with my sister and my nephew and his fiance, so that'll be good. And then go grab a hotel for the night, and then head out in the morning. And now my car is beeping at me for some reason. Illumination. Oh, okay, because it is just non-stop stuff here. This car is driving in a Genesis G80. I have never driven a car quite this fancy. I think maybe I have. One time I rented a car that was an Infiniti Q50. That was pretty amazing. That might have been a little more fancy, but this is really sweet. It's not an all car I rented. They were out of the category of cars I rented, and they had this luxury one, and so I got this one. I'm not complaining, but it does take me a long time to learn how to drive it. Anyway, back to me. Let me wrap this up real quick. This is the part about not editing, about not refining, about recording more raw, is that you're going to get these tangents, you're going to get these interruptions, you're going to get weird podcast episodes from me, because it's hard for me to schedule everything, or when I'm trying to do more impromptu. So anyway, about me, I mentioned where I grew up. I think I covered all that. I've lived in Kansas City, and then for the last 25 years I've lived in Colorado, all in Superior, and then up in the mountain in Estes Park, and then back in Brookfield. I think that's where I was. Anyway, my life, I went to college, got a BA in mass communications, I was a drummer for years, played in a lot of different gigs, a lot of different concerts. My scholarship at college was actually a music scholarship, and I still have drum sets I don't play professionally anymore, but I have 2 drum sets and a bunch of drums. You'll see them in my basement. When I record in the basement, you'll see some of my drum paraphernalia. But I'm a drummer. That's what I am. I don't play professionally anymore, but it's something that helps me. As far as jobs goes, I've worked in tech forever. I did 25 years working for Fortune 500 companies doing database design and database development, data mining, all that kind of stuff. And then I also spent about 10 years or 15 years doing film work. Right out of college, my degree was in film. And then I got back and I started screenwriting, and I supported film festivals. I was on the Vail Film Festival advisory board for 10 years and ran their educational programming for most of that time. And was part of the whole independent film scene, and did script doctoring and screenwriting, and taught screenwriting at University of Colorado Denver and Colorado Film School and all that kind of stuff. So I've had these different. I'm nomadic, okay? I've said this before. I go from job to job. I've had several jobs. The longest one was like 25 years doing tech. I worked for a lot of companies, but I also did other stuff. Anyway, then I discovered I was dependent on an anti-anxiety drug. I was on clonazepam, which is Klonopin, is the brand name. It's a benzodiazepine. I was on that for 12 years. And finally a doctor told me to come off it. I never knew it was addictive. I never knew it would make me dependent. Not necessarily addictive, but make me physically dependent. Anyway, to keep this all really short, came off the drug over 18 months. I tapered off of it. If you don't know about benzodiazepines, go check out my channel. Go check out the benzo tab at the top of the menu. Learn about benzos. I'm talking about drugs like Xanax, like Ativan, like Valium, like Klonopin, Librium, and so many other ones. But those are the primary ones that are out there. But go check it out. If you got questions about that, I have a lot of that information on our site at easinganxiety.com. Please go check that out. Anyway, so I came off of that, had a horrible first few years, just terrible symptoms. It's very severe. If you don't know what this drug can do, it's really bad if you take it long term. And for some people, they wind up with very severe complications. I'm one of those people. I am now 9 years off of benzodiazepines. I still have neurological damage that affects me every day. A list of symptoms that I've had are 50 to 100. It's just tons of neurological symptoms I've had. I still have several of these. I've gone through different procedures, medical tests, all kinds of stuff. It is so long, I don't want to get into it, because that's not what this podcast is about. I just wanted to tell you where I come from. And I had before I took the drugs, I had some anxiety. I wasn't prescribed the drug for anxiety, but I've dealt with anxiety issues off and on throughout my life. Since I've come off the drugs, my anxiety has been tenfold, very severe at times. Thankfully now it's eased somewhat over the 9 years I've been off the drugs, but it's still there, and I still have all the symptoms associated with anxiety. So that's one of the reasons I talk on anxiety. I get it. I've been there. I'm still there. I deal with it. and I wanted to talk about it some with you. So now, when I came off the drugs, everything was so bad I could no longer work in IT. I still can't work in IT. It's too stressful, and I don't have the cognitive limitations. Yes, I have mental complications from this, a lot of complications, but mental's one of them. And I couldn't go back into screenwriting either, and so I started to do benzodiazepine advocacy, would be the right term for it. So I wrote a book called Benzo Free: The World of Anti-Anxiety Drugs and the Reality of Withdrawal. And then I started a podcast 4.5 years ago based on the book, and it was called Benzo Free. And it's all these things you can find at our site at easinganxiety.com. And I and I've been working with people since then with the podcast. And I was co-chair of the Benzodiazepine Action Work Group, which has done a lot of great things. And I got involved in research teams, and I've been on several different research teams. I now have 5, 6, 7 papers. I think one just came out, last week, that I'm author on. We've done a lot of great work. I'm also part of the team that defined this long-term neurological dysfunction called BIND, benzodiazepine-induced neurological dysfunction, that identified this. I was part of that team, the nosology team and the research team, and my name's in the paper. And it's kind of cool working with these great psychiatrists and other doctors from Vanderbilt and University of Colorado Denver and other places. So I've been so blessed and privileged to be part of this world and to be accepted and to be able to make a difference. And I'm really proud of that, and I'm glad I was able to do that. So that's what I've been doing mostly for the last 4 or 5 years. I've actually, 10 years, come to think of it. It's been about 10 years because I wrote my book. I started writing my book a little over 10 years ago, so I've been doing this for 10 years. maybe that catches you up. Personally, I have been married now for 27 years to the same lovely woman, and I am very happy. She is amazing. Got a wonderful wife. Don't know children, but we're on our fourth rescue dog, so we have dogs. We just got our dog Murphy about 3 or 4 months ago. He is a I can't speak. Great Pyrenees Border Collie mix, and he is pretty amazing. But we're working on training him and trying to get him trained because he is still a puppy. He was a 6-month-old puppy when we got him. So, my parents just passed away a couple of years ago with my dad with Alzheimer's, my mom with dementia. I have a sister who lives in Kansas City, 6 nieces and nephews that my wife and I love to be part of their lives and as involved as we can with them. Shan's parents are still, my wife's parents are still up in north of us in Denver. So we're actually surrounded by her mom, her sister, and her brother's families. And so it's really nice that we have their family since my family's thinning out with the loss of my folks and everything. It's great that we have that family around us, and it's pretty cool. I don't know what else to tell you about myself. Politically, because we don't talk about this before, I'm independent, always have been, never once declared a political party, nor do I really intend to. I get just as frustrated as anybody else does with politics, with the extremes on both sides, to be honest. There's one side I've leaned more lately just because the other side is really irritating me. I'm not going to say what that is right now, but still, I try to be in the middle most of the time, and that's kind of where I come down. I'm a moderate kind of guy, and I'm a middle kind of guy, and that's one of the things I want to focus on with the podcast is there's a middle ground for us to get through most of the things in lives, and if we can find that, the more we get to the extremes, the more we get sent to these polarizing opposites, the harder life gets. We got to find that compromise. When the hell did compromise become a bad word? That's how we used to govern. That's how we used to run things. We would compromise. But that doesn't seem to be okay anymore. I don't know. Anyway, that's me. Soapbox, move to the side. Moving on. So I don't know what else to tell you right now. I'm sure you're going to learn plenty about me through this podcast. I just wanted to introduce you to myself right now and let you know what's going on. So I'm not sure what else to say. Unfortunately, right now, my Kansas City Chiefs are losing the game. It looks like, I think the score is, they're behind by 4 points. Okay. I'm having trouble watching my football anymore because my team has been disappointing this season. But what the heck? I'm a fan of Kansas City Chiefs, and then after that, Denver Broncos because I've lived both places, and then third down the line is Chicago Bears because I also lived there. Just places I've lived. I feel like I can be legitimate fans of these places, of these teams because I lived there. Anyway, so there's my football. Yeah. If I had one sport I like to watch, it's NFL football. That's what I watch. So I watch some golf too and some other things here and there, but NFL football is really the one. I grew up playing hockey, in case you're wondering. I played hockey outside of Chicago and then some soccer for a while and ref soccer. So as far as sports, that's what I did. And like I said, I played music. I've been in theater and musical theater. I've done concerts. I've been in orchestras. I've played in gigs, jazz and rock, and so been all over the place with music. And that's been a cornerstone of my life for a long time, and I'm really happy about that. I was in Boy Scouts and became an Eagle Scout. I was in high school, like I said, I went to University of Missouri, Kansas City for my college, inner city, school in downtown Kansas City, and yada 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 yada. That's me. Okay, one more of those. Sorry for rambling. I'm not going to be as hyper talking throughout most of this, just because I'm trying to get some basics out to you all about who I am and where I come from. So that's me. I am a guy who's 58 years old, trying to deal with life and figure out where I'm at and where I'm going and make the most out of the years I have left. Trying to be a good husband, which is very important to me. Trying to be a good friend. Trying to be a good person. I believe in kindness. I really do. I believe in treating people with respect and kindness above all else. Why is that so hard? I guess I struggle with that too sometimes. But I think it's a good thing to focus on. There are a lot of things I believe in. I'll cover not principles. I'll cover ideology. I don't know. The words just sound so dogmatic. I don't want them to. Just things that drive me and my thoughts and will drive this podcast and my thoughts. So we're going to talk about those in an upcoming episode. So I think it's important. You're going to want to know that. You want to know who you're listening to if you are listening to this. But I think today, with the distractions I just had, I was trying to have a very solemn, soulful moment with the bench where my folks were from and with life in general, and just I was trying to have that, and it was interrupted, and I got mad. I got frustrated. Not at any one person, but just at life. And then the bad news came in about the loss of my mom and dad's good friend. And that's hard. And I talked to his wife for a little while, and that's hard. And I just so feel for them, because they're now going through what I just went through a couple of years ago with my parents. And I know what that's like. I know what that grief is like. I know what that process is like. It's hard. But we get through it. I have all kinds of limitations. I have all kinds of problems. I have all kinds of symptoms. I have all kinds of mental difficulties. I'm screwed up. I am so far from perfect. But I still like myself. I'm probably average in the end. I got problems, but who doesn't? I have difficulties, but who doesn't? This life, this fucking thing called life, is hard. It is hard. It's painful. It's a struggle. But I don't know that I'd want it any other way. If everything was perfect, and everything was serene, and everything was beautiful, and everything was peaceful, and everything was perfect, we'd be miserable. We'd be bored out of our minds. We need stimulation. We need a little drama. We need a little conflict. The bad makes the good good. Doesn't mean we want it. Doesn't mean we want to seek it out, although some of us do. But the hardships in our lives is what creates us. It's what builds character. And it also it sets us up to enjoy the good that much more. Life is a roller coaster of good and bad. It always is. And I've learned to embrace even the bad almost as much as the good. Going through what I went with benzodiazepines, coming off those drugs, I never thought I would live through that kind of hell. And it was like that for a while, but I got through it. I had the strength to get through it. I had the wife who has the strength to help me get through it, and I had family to help me, and not everybody had that. I was blessed to have the support system I had to get through it. I also had some faith. I believe in God. I don't really have a strict faith with any certain religion. I was raised Christian, but I don't know that I still am that. But I have a faith that there's some higher power out there. It may not be formed into some, graphic ideology or whatever, but I have some faith. And I see it sometimes. So this podcast is not about faith, and if you have don't have faith in a higher being or an atheist or agnostic or whatever, I get that too, because my logical brain, my skeptical brain constantly wants to challenge me on any kind of belief system. I see both. That's why I'm kind of this middleman, this moderate person who just, I have a very logical, skeptical brain that sometimes kicks in and it wants to know answers, and so I always question things. Maybe that's why I like doing a podcast. I am curious more than anything else. I am curious. I'm curious about life. I'm curious about all its inconsistencies, all its intricacies, and all its intimacies. See how I did that? Nice little alliteration there. The passions of life are amazing and wonderful. And there's a way to live this human life with joy, with dignity, with love and understanding, with passion and fire. There's a way to live this life well. I'm not saying I have that answer, but I'm happy to explore and try to find it together if you want to join me. I tell you, one of the hardest things for me to do when I'm recording these podcasts is to hit the stop button. One of the reasons I do a podcast is because I like to talk. I will admit that right up front. I've always been a talker. It's who I am. So if you are a talker and you like talking to people, maybe you should do something with that. That's why I'm here. Enough about me. I'm going to wrap this up. I got to go meet my family for dinner, and then going to kick off 2024. So these podcasts won't come out until 2024, probably in mid-January some point, or the end of January, but I still want to wish you a happy 2024. I truly hope that it's a good year. I hope it's a year that we as a world, let me see if I can get this right, that we as a world stop trying to find each other's faults and instead, what's the instead here? And instead just try to understand one another. Maybe it's that simple. Stop blaming. Stop seeking to blame. I feel like we all do that so much, and I'm guilty too. Seek first to understand. I think if we all did a little more of that, there'd be a lot less hate, anger, frustration, divisiveness, and yes, even war in this world. Is it that simple? No. But all of the great changes, all of the peace accords, all of the, I don't know what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say is it all has to start somewhere. And so my wish for everyone out there for 2024 is that we find a way to get along with each other a little bit better. There. How's that for you? I still don't have a sign-off for this. Not that I'll have some campy sign-off, but I might. But I don't have a sign-off for this yet, so we're going to see. But this is just the beginning of this road trip. I am so excited. Tomorrow I pick up my friend, JB, and we are going to hit the road, and we're heading to Tennessee. So I will tune in with you tomorrow. I'll tell you more about what I envision for the podcast, and I hope you'll join us on this journey. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you soon. Hey, this is Dee. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking out our podcast. I do need to remind everyone that this podcast is for informational purposes only and should never be considered medical, psychological, or professional health advice of any kind. If you or someone you know is dealing with significant mental health issues, please seek professional help. Resources can be found in our show notes and on our website at unevenpodcast.com. Take care of yourself, and I'll catch you on the flip side.